G'day guys and welcome. My name is Michael and I am the Deadaussiegamer and welcome to today's video. Now, we are going to be discussing something very mature, so viewer discretion absolutely advised as we discuss explicit content in role-playing games. Now, the reason we're talking about this is because recently on a show called Verona on the Roleplay channel, Adam Cobell, the GM that runs it, had an incident which led to basically the cancellation of the series. Adam Cobell issued an apology statement, and there's a whole drama that's circulating around it at the moment. If you want to know more, I'm going to put links to those to those streams in the video below. But I had a lot of my fans pretty much approach me and say, "Hey, Michael, what do you think about this? What's happening? You know, what's your impression of what went down?" Now, look, I'd love to share with you guys just a big video about like my opinions on what happened and my opinions of Adam Cobell's GMing style, but that's not what my channel's about. I'm not about, throwing shade at people. I'm not about talking about dramas and current affairs. What I am talking about today is education, because all I want to do with you guys is help you guys be the best kind of GMs and role players you guys can be and share my experiences. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Now, explicit content is not a topic I am unfamiliar with. I have seen so many different games where it's come up and it's torn apart games and destroyed them. What we mean when we say explicit content is we're talking about stuff that, quite frankly, you wouldn't run for a child. That's where I draw my line. Anything that focuses on the elements that are mature or adult or even to the borderline R-rated is, for me, explicit content. Sure. You can go to a tavern and enjoy a drink. Absolutely. But as soon as you talk about things like alcohol poisoning, the catastrophic impacts of over drinking or binge drinking, the sleaziness and all that sort of stuff, that's when you're getting to the explicit point. There's a line that gets drawn. I mean, I've run games that have had sex, drugs, rock and roll, the whole thing, but I do what most people do. I fade to black. I say that you leave that up to your imagination as to what has occurred, and we move on. We do not linger on these points. And that is because explicit content targets players and makes them feel discomfort or makes them, forces them into a position where they are forced to confront their own feelings towards something explicit. As a GM, that is not your right. Ever. Ever, 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 ever. That is never the right of a GM to target the player's emotions that way. You are there to entertain the player, absolutely. And in a player contract, that might involve doing things that frighten them or make them uncomfortable. And we'll be talking about a little bit about that later. But for me, using explicit content in order to try and nail down your narrative is the equivalent of running a horror game and throwing a plastic spider at your player who is arachnophobic. It's not clever, it's not narrative, it's not role play, it is just someone being a knob. Right? That's just my 2 cents on explicit content. But then again, of course there are going to be people out there who want to use explicit content. Let's discuss how to use it if you must, and of course why it's such a bad idea in so many different ways. Okay, so first of all, using explicit content. For me, using explicit content has one very specific use, and that is if you're running a campaign. Not you've suddenly shifted from a campaign into a one-shot game, but when you decide to dedicate a game to a mature theme. If I decide to tell my players, hey guys, have you watched Game of Thrones? Fantastic. I'm going to be running an explicit content game based on Game of Thrones. It'll involve potential, etc., etc., etc. I'm not going to go into it, but you know what I'm talking about if you've seen Game of Thrones. It's going to have all this stuff. It'll happen to you. It'll happen around you. Are you guys okay with this? This is the bare bones of it. Because I am building that genre or that theme of game. That is what the whole idea is behind. That's the one and only time I think it's acceptable. Another excuse that I've heard quite often for using explicit content is when the GM has gotten a bit too big for their britches. And this kind of bugs me, and I've played on more than one game where this has happened. The GM is being conniving or being sinister, and they want to kind of get away with their evil machination. You'll see it when they giggle at something explicit when it's happening, and you're just like, dude, like, seriously, this is so uncomfortable. When you talk about girls that have different biological organs, and they're giggling about themselves as you're trying to like sort of act out the scene, but you don't know this fact, and apparently it's relevant for whatever reason that this individual's trying to seduce you. Whatever, you know, like it's the GM sort of getting into their own headcanon about this power trip that's happening. I despise that. That's one of my least favorite types of explicit content use, but it's out there. GMs who are too big for their britches. The other type, the third type, this is kind of accidental, and I understand it. When someone creates games for Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder or whatever, right? We take inspiration from a whole bunch of different medias. Sometimes we take inspiration from the medias we enjoy, like Goblin Slayer, the anime. If you haven't watched it, it's a fun anime. You know, explicit content warning here. You know, but then when you convert that to a game, to a role-playing game, there is a massive translation. When we watch media, when we watch entertainment, we are a passive observer. We are absorbing entertainment passively. You sit back in your chair and you just enjoy absorbing the narrative. That's not how role-playing games work. Role-playing games are an active form of entertainment, meaning that the people involved are a part of the story. And when stuff happens, they are involved directly. They are attached to it, you know. Their characters, their soul, a bit of themselves are in the game. And when something explicit happens to them that they don't want to happen, it doesn't make the character uncomfortable. It makes the player uncomfortable, which goes back to what we were saying before. You know, it's not a GM's prerogative to make players feel uncomfortable. Again, there is always going to be excuses. Oh, that wasn't my goal. Oh, that wasn't my intention. Oh, I did this by accident. That's fine. It is fine to make mistakes. That's why we learn. A lot of people ask me like, hey, Michael, why should we listen to you? What makes your ideas and your thoughts better than anyone else's? It doesn't. But I will tell you one thing. I have seen and made more mistakes than many people will make in their entire lives in regards to role-playing games. And I can tell you what, I've seen every single dark, dirty, nasty place that an explicit content game will get you. And I will tell you this, there is no scenario where the reward you get for using explicit content will get even near outweighing how terribly awful and friendship ruining an explicit content game can get. There's never a correlation. I've never found it happen. I've never seen people go, oh, wow, I'm really glad that we had that scene that was really focused in on all these really mature themes about, you know, whatever. And I've never seen players go, oh, man, that was the highlight of my game. It never happens. And I don't know why people consider doing it when people very rarely enjoy it. So there you go. All right. Now, of course, there is scenarios that are the exception. As I said, there is the whole idea of, say, horror. If you're playing in a horror game that you are aware is a horror game, that you've been told will feature these mature themes, then you as a GM are responsible for engaging in what's known as a contract with the players, or a player contract. This is where you outline the comfort zone of your players. The reason we do this is because, as mentioned in the first part, a GM's role is to entertain. A GM's role is to encourage the PCs to feel and emote and be a part of the world, but not to step over the boundaries with a player. The player contract is about learning those boundaries, not to find out where those boundaries are so you can exploit them, not so you can find out where those boundaries are so you can try pushing them to see how far they go. They are there for you to abide by strictly. I've had a game once where I openly said, I'm running a horror game, guys. There are lots of really mature things. I'm not doing anything sexual because I don't really feel comfortable with that myself. But there are some pretty gory, very descriptive, very disgusting like things that'll happen here. Is everyone okay with that? Everyone said, yeah, they're fine. One person said, I don't do cannibalism. And I didn't understand why. I'm like, cannibalism's pretty, you know, out there. I mean, I'm talking about Lovecraftian level, like, messed up, but sure, I can avoid cannibalism. Another player turned around and said, I don't like bad things happening to little kids. And I said, sure. I did have a few scenarios involving little kids. It was an easy rework, but that was my goal. I wanted to rework them. I didn't want to get a reaction out of my player who found these things uncomfortable, so I added them in. That's insane. That's lunatics. That's literally the opposite of what a player contract's for. So yeah, if you are looking at genuinely running an explicit game, because that's the genre and that's the understanding, player contract is a must. 100% a must. Okay. The third is consent. Now, consent is super important. And I know it's going to kind of take a very, very strange pass, and I know everyone's going to go to a sexual place, but I found a way to explain this using alcohol instead of sex because, again, sex doesn't make me uncomfortable. I just don't want to talk about it because I feel it gets into a weird place. So let's talk alcohol. I like alcohol. Alcohol's awesome. So you've got 3 characters at the table. You've got a person who likes to drink, enjoys alcohol. A person who is easily influenced will take alcohol or will leave it. And then you have another person who is a pious character, a wujen or a monk who needs to keep their body pure in order to gain their powers, so they do not drink alcohol. You have these 3 very, very distinct characters moving in. The first thing we're going to talk about is non-consent. Non-consent is quite simple. All 3 go into the bar. The guy who likes to drink says, "Hey, can I order you guys anything?" The guy who can kind of take it or leave it says, "Yeah, sure. I will have alcohol, please." That is consent. They have said, "Yes, I will have alcohol." The monk says, "No, thank you, I will pass." That is non-consent. No, they do not want any alcohol. The guy buys the drinks and hands it to everyone. The person who can take it or leave it basically says, "Oh, you know what? I think I'm okay for now. I'll drink that later." Now, this has gone from consent to non-consent. Very simple concept. That means they don't want to drink it. They shouldn't drink it, and no one has the right to force them to drink it. If they do, then they are breaking consent, which, when you're talking about explicit content, is a no-no. You do not break non-consent, ever. That's just golden rule. Golden rule. You could try to convince them. You could say, "Oh, are you sure it's really good?" And that is you trying to convince them. That's fine. If they continue to say no, then it's also a no. But if they go, "Oh, you know what? Actually, it does sound really good. Yeah, sure, I'll have it." That is then back to being consent. It's a constant, ongoing thing and does not become limited because of the player contract. Now, in regards to the whole Verona thing, what happened in that scene, which, again, you can go watch for yourself if you want to find out about it, was a third type of consent, which is dubious consent. That is to say that consent was given without fully understanding or fully being aware of the context in which they were being presented. What does that mean? Well, same scenario. Let's say that the guy who enjoys the drink had secretly handed the monk a drink that contained alcohol. Didn't tell the player, and it was simply "Okay, cool, I got you all a drink." And he waits, giggles a little bit, and the monk drinks alcohol. The monk then goes, "Hang on, this is this is absolutely delicious. This is amazing." And then the guy goes, "Ha ha! I tricked you. It was actually alcohol." Now, the player has no way of interpreting that because it's not like they drank the drink. And they trusted this individual because otherwise it's like, "Oh, I use a sense motive on the alcohol, on the drink." That didn't happen. The consent was dubious. They wanted a drink. They said that they didn't want alcohol, but they're being tricked into it, or they're being misled into what it is. And that for me is equally as bad as non-consent. If something like that occurs, the best way to handle things is to simply go, "Okay, my character is trying to trick your character. In that container is actually alcohol." The player can then go, "Oh, okay, yeah, my character is going to make a perception check to see if they notice." This encourages them to kind of go, "Okay, my character has not given consent, and that's fine. But I, as the player, still have the right to consent to something happening to my character, especially something that's going to impact it in such a way." I roll a dice. I didn't perceive it. Okay, I drink the alcohol and I taste it and I go, "Oh," instead of, "Yum, it's water," This is what I think a lot of GMs who don't trust their players tend to lean to. For me, I always try to remain as transparent as possible when I run games. I don't like tricking my players in order to get a visceral response. It's not what it's about. I want my players to build in anticipation. I want them to figure out what I'm about to do. There is nothing sweeter than that moment when my players have put all the pieces together, it's all fallen together, and they've just looked at me with these, "Are you serious? Is this what's happening?" And I go, "Yeah, that's exactly what's happening." Because that for me is equally, that for me is the incredible moment, It's not waiting till the last moment till they have to suffer from something or become ambushed by one of my tactics for me to feel good. That's not going to make me feel good at all. So, yeah, there you go. That's our talk on consent. All right. let's keep moving. Let's keep moving. We're running short on time here. Now, the thing that happened with the whole Verona thing, again, touching very loosely on it, is not likely to happen to you at a private game. And let me explain why. As we've explained with the whole player contract and consent thing, in the apology video, Adam mentioned that there wasn't really a game zero and the player contracts weren't really established. This was kind of dangerous, you know. I mean, I'll admit I've done it before myself. I've played games with no game zero. It's been hard. It's been definitely less preferable than the games that I've run game zeros in, but it does make it difficult. What happened was the dubious consent angle, in which the player in question was not fully aware of where the game was going as the GM was guiding the story forward. This is generally okay. To not know where your GM is leading you is commonplace, and one will usually trust the GM with your character, with your narrative, with your story, and follow in suit. Now, at a table, when something happens that your character might not like, you have the ability at any point in time to take away consent and say, no, this is not on. Actually, I'm not really comfortable with this. Hey guys, sorry. I'm sorry to stop the game, but this is what needs to happen. That is fine when you're at a table, and a lot of people do it. I've done it. When you're playing in a game that is live entertainment, when you're playing in a game that is a show with an audience, it's got a schedule, you've got a production team, you know, the stuff that we normally do and take for granted is that being a professional entertainer means that you need to adhere to the unspoken rule of accept. When someone presents you with a scenario or presents you with a theme or a story hook, you accept it and you move forward. You accept and you move forward. Which means when you get to a point of dubious consent, and you get to that point where you realize what's happening, you're caught in a really tough spot. Because you can no longer remove consent because, well, being a professional entertainer, you have to accept and go with the flow, which basically hog ties players into doing that. This is why explicit content, especially in live entertainment games, is almost an absolute no. I guarantee you guys, you will never see anything explicit on my games. I'm going to make you that promise. If it happens, I will sooner pull the plug on my own show than to allow that to happen. Because, I mean, even we had a scenario actually tonight, as I am recording this after episode 6 of Minion Quest, where one of the characters was investigating the tattoos on the character's body. Now, this is everyone has a tattoo, and it sort of told their character's level. So the joke was that, okay, everyone strip, we need to go look at these tattoos. I did not make a big deal of it. I did not make it explicit. I did not focus on that moment. But at that point, I decided to, hey guys, look, all of you know where your tattoos are. Tell me where your tattoos are, and you can decide whether or not you need to strip. One of them says, yeah, it's on my butt cheek. It's like, okay, cool. You drop your pants, and you can see your butt. It's not explicit. It's you have decided where it is. You have decided whether or not you want to show it. It is now consensual, and you have decided to do that. That is the important bit. Not explicit, consent always given. That is how entertainment should be run. Okay, cool. We've gone through that. I've got 2.5 minutes, so I'm going to share with you guys a very personal story. I think I've shared it once before in a video long ago, but I'm going to share it again with you guys because it is a very personal one, and it is one about a sexual assault that happened to me in-game with one of my characters. So I was playing in a game with a friend of mine. I'm still keeping contact with him nowadays. Great guy, great GM. And it was the first time I was playing with this particular group of individuals, bar one. One of these guys, we'd played together for a while, and we were both, supporting each other for characters. Now, my character was effectively death, like big guy, scythe, one-hit kill type, strong dude, tank. Oh my God, Michael's playing a tank. What a big deal. Yeah, it happens. So anyway, I was playing this character, and one of the characters in the group was a whore. Now, I was kind of taken back by when I found out that the player described it. It's like, oh yes, no, she's got like really large breasts, and she's always wearing like a maid's outfit or something. And I was like, okay. Now, I don't judge people based on the characters they play in role-playing games. Role-playing games is about a disassociation from reality. So what am I thinking? It's like, yeah, it's fine. Okay, sure. And in my mind, I'm like, you know what? I've played drug dealers. I've played, murderers and assassins. I mean, I'm not comfortable with sexuality in that sort of sense, but why would I have a problem with someone playing a Lady of the Night? Someone who exchanges physical favors for money. Sure, no problem. My player contract at that time, whoops, that side, yeah. My player contract at the time was quite simple. I am part of this group, I am on this adventure, and I am to protect these people. That's my goal. And that's what I did, multiple occasions. Now, one particular night, the player in question had his character sneak into my bedroom. Now, at that point, I was kind of like, look, my character's not really that way. He's just not interested in that sort of thing. I made it pretty clear. She then woke me up and, sort of naked, presented herself, yada, 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 yada. And I went, no, this is not happening. You're going back to your own room. Now, through a series of rather unfortunate roles involving athletics check failures and the like, she basically pinned my character down and performed oral services on him. At which point, I was stunned. I was basically absolutely stunned. I had no idea what to say. I couldn't think. I was at that point where there was this freeze, and all I could think of was, did that really just happen? Is this person being serious right now? Is this what is occurring? Now, this person then took the silence as, oh, this is okay. I should keep going. And then continued. And pretty much at that point, we didn't end the game. I said, okay, cool. At the end of it all, my character pushes you away, throws you out of the room, and locks the door. I then approach the GM and I say, listen, I accept what happens, but I'm altering my player contract. And I talked to this guy straight, like this was at the table. I said, if you ever do stuff like that again, my character will kill you. I won't hesitate. I will not hold back. I will murder your character in a single hit. I will then convince everyone to not resurrect you, not heal you, nothing. I will have no qualms with doing this. And the GM's like, no, that's absolutely fair. What happened here was unacceptable. And the guy kind of understood, it didn't really change his demeanor, but he aimed that aspect of his character away from the group after that. And my character died a few games later, epic battle with a giant tentacle monster, no relation. But that was what happened, And my big walk away from this was, the silence is probably the most dangerous element of using explicit content, In that moment of silence, the person who uses it is fully aware of what they're doing. They've already come to the decision that they want to do that. They've come to that realization, and that's fine. But it takes everyone else a few moments to really process if what is happening is real, if what is happening is just a joke, or, what's going on, or maybe even if the GM is or is not going to stop what's happening. This pause is so vital. As a GM, if you see that pause ever, you need to stop the game. Like, just stop it and say, hey, whoa, hang on, guys. Let's take a breather. Give people a chance to kind of process and respond, because, that's what I felt in that moment that I didn't have. I didn't have that chance to respond or do anything. I had failed my check. This was happening. Well, what do I do? I couldn't think of what to do. So yeah, there's that. Now, if at the end of this video, and by the way, thank you guys so much for paying attention. This is a long video, and I appreciate you guys spending the time with me. If, for whatever reason, you I suppose, need or want to use explicit content, always, as a GM, aim it towards the NPCs. Because that way, you always give yourself consent. It's always going to happen for yourself. If you need to make your bad guy feel even more bad by doing something explicit, fine. But make an NPC doing it to another NPC. Make them the victims, because really, at the end of the day, that's just you role-playing with yourself. Never cross that boundary. Don't cross that boundary between player and another player, or player and the GM, unless you are absolutely certain that your relationship as an individual, as a player and as the other person, is solid. That's the only excuse. Okay. Oh, and of course, I suppose I'll give you guys a final thought on the whole Verona thing. I honestly know that mistakes happen. Like I said, one of the things that I am well known for is the fact that I've made so many mistakes. Adam is a reasonable game master. I've seen him on a few shows, and he had a moment where he made a mistake. He's acknowledged it, he's gotten in front of it, and he's apologized for it. I think it's important to understand that even if you are being broadcast public, that does not mean you are any less capable of making mistakes or bad decisions and the like. It'll happen. It's just that obviously when you do it publicly, it's public, So be sure to, offer support where it needs to be. Make sure that you do take the time to check in, because seeing where people learn from these mistakes is the best way for you to also understand how to make the best of yourself and how to avoid those same mistakes as well. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm sorry if it was a little bit heavy than my usual set. I know I haven't been releasing a lot of videos. That is because I have been taking place in a fun adventure called the Wizards of Kambari. Again, I will have a playlist to that in the link below if you want to check that out. I played an otter, so yeah, lots of fun there. So I will be back to my usual posting schedule with more of these advice videos. So stay tuned for that. Be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell for notifications on all the stuff that you will see on the Deadaussiegamer channel. If you want to support us, then head on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/Deadaussiegamer, where you guys can pretty much support us, the channel, and keep it going. If you want to come hang out with us on Discord, there's a Discord link. If you want to check us out on Facebook, I am currently making some slots available for people to come and book games for me to run for them. So go check that out on Facebook as well. And yeah, pretty much from me, guys, as always, thank you so much for listening. And as always, game hard or die trying. Bye-bye.